and come in.
All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome to today's webinar, Why You're Not Getting Hired After Your Career Break and How to Turn Things Around. We're thrilled to have two distinguished experts with us, Susan Rietano Davey and Kelley Biskupiak, who will share their invaluable insights and expertise on navigating the challenges of re-entering the workforce after a career break. I'm Megan Frazier, the Marketing Operations Specialist for PTLU. You're all here because you're either actively working on getting back to work or you're planning to. Prepare to Launch You helps women just like you return to work after a career break, offering practical advice and actionable strategies to help re-enter the workforce successfully. Today, I'll be manning the chat, so feel free to post any questions and we'll have some time at the end to answer them. This session is being recorded, so if you need to step out or miss anything, you'll be sent the recording later today, along with the resources to help you in your career relaunch. So without further ado, let's warmly welcome Susan Rietano Davey and Kelley Biskupiak as they share their wisdom.
Thank you, Megan. And
Thanks, Megan, what a great intro.
As a little aside, Megan was a student of ours.
Yes, she was.
Before she joined us and we hired her.
Yes, she was.
And she helps us stay on track. So we're gonna take you through a slideshow that'll just help us kind of stay on task, and we will be allowing plenty of time for you to ask your questions. Okay, why didn't that? Oh, that's full screen.
Yeah.
You and mine's over here. Yeah. Right here. Okay. And wonder if somebody has their volume on, or they're not. They might want to mute if you're taking that phone call or talking. We don't mind. We just don't want to hear anything we're not supposed to hear. So Megan already introduced our topic for today. There it goes. Okay. So a little bit about us. Kelley and I are both moms of four. I'm Susan. This is Kelley. We're both moms of four, and we both took career breaks and relaunched our careers. So we not only teach this, we've done it.
Yes. And together we have a combined 40 plus years of experience helping women navigate work and life transitions. We're widely recognized experts. We do webinars for people all over the world.
We have a very strong background in education and curriculum development, and then also in executive coaching, hiring, management on the business side. And with our help, students from all over the globe, pretty much every continent, I think, except Antarctica, are landing jobs with our help after gaps of career breaks of 2 years to 22 years.
Yes. So we are so excited to have you all here with us today, and we hope that you get some real value out of this webinar as you are navigating your career search.
That's for sure. So what we're going to do today first is call out the 4 primary reasons that you're not landing. And that's taking away the obvious things that it was the holidays, the economy is kind of questionable, but there are things that career relaunchers typically do that seem like they're a good idea, but they are wrong.
Right. We're going to explain why the common steps you're taking might be ineffective, that you kind of alluded to that there. And then we're going to teach you the proven new strategies to conduct a successful job search post-career break.
And throughout, we'll weave in some stories of students who've worked with us before to kind of understand how those strategies play out in the real world. And of course, as we mentioned earlier, we will leave some time for questions.
Yeah.
Now, 2 options on questions. You can save and ask them to us live. If you're afraid you might forget your question, or we may not get to it, just write it in the chat and Megan will make sure that she captures it for us.
Yeah. So here are the job search mistakes that are most commonly made by career relaunchers. So the first one, and tell us if any of this sounds familiar to you. You lack a clear direction. So Suze, let's really expand on what that means.
So basically, for you to create a compelling resume, a strong LinkedIn profile, and for you to be able to communicate your story well, you have to know who you're talking to.
Right.
So you need to know who your audience is what we say. So what specific roles are interesting to you? What kind of industry interests you? What makes you a good fit for a particular role or a particular industry? And if you don't know these things, you're shooting in the dark. You can't go into a marketplace in the 21st century with a stop me when you hear something you like kind of plan. You have to be very strategic at the front end to be successful at the back end.
You don't have a compelling story, and sometimes it's not that you don't have one, you actually have one, but how you package it together and communicate that is really the issue, the key.
So the story, we're going to spend a fair amount of time of today's presentation on the storytelling piece, but the story is, how do you connect the dots of your experience? If all of you had a very conventional resume with no breaks or job hops or short-term gigs, you wouldn't be here.
Right.
So just by virtue of being here, we know that something about your history is unconventional and needs explaining. And so you have to be able to explain it. Otherwise, if you don't control the narrative, the person reading your resume or on the other side of the interview desk or screen is going to create that story for them themselves, and it's not going to be as favorable.
Yes. And it sounds so much better when it comes from you. And it's actually a big part of how you grow your confidence is being able to tell your compelling story.
That's
and
right.
you all have one. We promise you that. So you are posting and praying. We hear this all the time. Actually, ironically, I had this conversation with my 20-something-year-old who is applying for internships.
Yeah.
He is posting and praying right now. So talk about
It
that.
basically means that you are applying indiscriminately. So it seems very logical that you would go on Indeed or go on LinkedIn or go on a company website if you have one that you've targeted and look for jobs and apply. And you can feel like you're being very
So
productive, that you're doing meaningful work.
Yes.
But as you'll learn later, the numbers don't bear out that way. You only have about a 15% chance of even getting an interview by applying that way. So you don't want to invest your time there. And we're going to teach you a better way.
And the last one is that negative mindset that we can often sit in, and we understand, we know it, we have lived our own versions of this. We know how challenging this process can be. It's why we created this course and in this organization that we have. And I really feel like our mindset is something that in all of the things we can't control, this is one of the things we can control. So we'll talk more about that later.
And that the way you talk to yourself has incredible impact. You can do everything else right, but if you're not talking well to yourself, you won't execute well. And that's the key, the execution. So that first one, not having that career direction. How do you find that direction?
Right.
So
we want to start with research, right? So let's
really important.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit more about that.
So there's so much available. I mean, you can use AI. You could, I mean, that would be a good tool to use Chat GPT to type in. And by the way, to get Chat GPT, with someone ask us that recently, just Google search it and sign up. It's free. You could type in, I have excellent skills in organizational skills, reporting skills. I know Excel well. List your key skills. What jobs might be good for me? That would be one way to look. Another way is to go to company websites. If you know that there are employers in your area that have a great reputation, take a look. What do they do? Look at some of their job postings, get an idea. You can look at job postings. They're very valuable. What we don't want you to do, though, is just apply that way indiscriminately. So do the research.
You can also get in the weeds with the job description. Like I have to have the perfect job description in order for me to be able to think.
Well, I have to meet every feature of that job description.
Yes, but even just when you're doing that exploring and assessing, you might not have everything that's in the job description, but it does, it does start to get your brain thinking in the right direction. Yeah.
I honestly think, LinkedIn's a great place to look to see what companies are hiring, what kinds of jobs they're hiring, reading job descriptions just to see if this is something that would interest you. But I also find that going back and looking at, even before you call anybody, looking at your former colleagues' LinkedIn to see where did they end up.
Right.
Looking at former classmates' LinkedIn to see where did they end up. You'll see we use LinkedIn a lot. If you don't have a LinkedIn page, this will be a very essential tool, even in the early stages of your search. So the first piece is just to do that research to get some ideas about what roles or functions or industries or even individual companies might be a good fit for you.
Right. And then the next is exploring and really kind of digging in on that. Right?
That's the human element. So the first piece is a little anonymous. You're doing some research from the comfort of your home. Now you're going to reach out to people. We've had so many students say, I was reaching out to everybody. And then at Thanksgiving dinner, I was sitting at the table and I found out that my brother's sister, my sister-in-law, works in customer success. And that's what I want to do.
Okay, wait, no, we've had more of, I was sitting and getting my hair cut.
A lot of hairdressers. Yeah.
Hairdressers talk to so many different people.
Right,
and we've had a number of students who have made connections through
their hairdressers. So the idea is to take whatever you've learned through that first research piece and now explore it in more depth with human beings. So talking to fellow alums, neighbors, friends, letting everybody know in your circle, hey, I'm going to use Krista's example because she's the one that came to mind. I'm really interested in customer success. I've been a teacher. As a stay-at-home mom, I've been doing some nonprofit work, but I really like the idea of working with clients to help make sure they have a really good experience. And I think my skills translate well, but I want to learn more about it. And she's the one who at the dining room table found out that her sister-in-law worked in that field, right? So making sure that you use those connections to find people, and your goal is not to look for a job or do an interview. Your
No.
goal is to meet with these people. If you can do it in person, great, but at the very least on a phone call or on Zoom, ask them some questions about what they do. Get that information. Find out what it is that they do every day, how success is measured in that role, how do they like it,
Mhm.
what would they do differently, what kinds of skills make someone successful
What's
in that
currently
role,
happening in that industry,
role
what's
or that
hot.
industry. Exactly.
Yep.
Right.
Okay, and then the last is to assess. So we've researched, we've done some exploring, and now we need to take a critical look at
Now we
the
turn the
information we're
lens
gathering.
inward
Mhm.
and say, now that I've learned all about this role, do those daily activities even interest me?
Right.
Does this sound like a place or a role where I could be successful? Do I bring at least half of the required skills to the
Mhm.
job? Will it fulfill what I want to do? We find that with women in general,
Yeah.
but even more so with people who have a career gap that they need to cover, they feel like they've just got to grab whatever comes their way.
Right.
We want you thinking about, what do I want out of this
Mhm.
job? What do I want to do every day? And being a little bit more selfish and certainly more discriminate in choosing that lane that we're talking about.
Yes.
And we're going to provide you in a follow-up email with an explore and assess guide that really helps you apply this strategy in a methodical way. So stay tuned for
And
that.
so that same productive feeling that you get from just sitting down at your computer and throwing out and posting and praying and doing that same accomplished feeling, you're going to get that same accomplished feeling, but it's actually strategies that are going to work in your favor.
Right.
And you have to be diligent about it. This is not something that you can just do like one Tuesday, or this is something that has to be an ongoing process that you're vetting and assessing so that you know that you're speaking to the proper audience. Knowing that is crucial. Is crucial.
And that's really the next piece of it. So you know where you want to go. Now you've got to think, what does that audience need to hear from me? So gone are the days where you could create a stop me when you hear something you like resume. If you're on the older side and you were applying for jobs 20 years ago, you could do that.
Yeah.
You could write a long resume because they weren't getting so many resumes, and they actually took the time to read them, but it's not the case anymore. So you need to make sure that what you're saying in your resume is able to capture the attention of that reader within 6 to 8 seconds, because that is all they're giving it.
Right.
All right. And there are a few rules to go along with that.
Yeah. So this kind of goes, so rule number one goes along with what you're saying right now. So custom tailored resumes are no-nos, right?
You can't do it because you can't change. And I know you'll find plenty of people who will say, tailor your resume to the job. They haven't really thought through how that works, because you can only have one LinkedIn. And 90% of employers are going to look at your LinkedIn before they interview you. So if I have a resume that's talking to me about, let's use Krista as an example again, a customer success role, but a LinkedIn that talks about training and teaching and all the other things that she might want to do, that doesn't work, right? And you can't change your resume for each job, I mean, your LinkedIn for each job. There has to be resume and LinkedIn harmony here. So you have to choose a lane. You have to have one specific audience you're talking to. Now, you may strike out, or you may go through interviews and realize, you know what? I don't want to do this. Like, I didn't see the full story when I was exploring and assessing. And now that I'm actually interviewing and learning more about these organizations and this role, I don't want it. Then you go back.
Right.
You change your resume, you change your LinkedIn, you explore and assess, find a new lane, and create new tools.
But then and only then do you do that.
Exactly.
So rule number 2 is to pitch your career break as an asset and not a liability.
That's right.
This is a really important point that we want to make.
We spent a whole lesson in our course talking about the elephant in the room. The elephant that you're bringing in the room is, yes, you've got this great resume that kind of talks through those years that you weren't working, showing some of your leadership community roles, maybe some nonprofit work that you've done. But the bottom line is, I'm reading your resume, I'm a hiring manager, and I see that 15 years ago, you were a software engineer at Google, and for the last 15 years, you've been doing leadership role at a school system. I'm not stupid. I know that you took a break. I appreciate the fact that you've made an effort to show me the good work that you've done during that break, but you have to talk about it. And you have to believe that that time that you've spent as a
Was
caregiver
valuable.
and a volunteer is valuable. It is. And then you need to be able to tell me in a compelling way.
Yeah.
All right. And that's
Yeah,
a third
that's rule
piece.
number 3.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's not just on the fly telling it.
No.
It is, you have to practice this.
Mhm.
And in that practice is where that confidence in telling
Mhm.
it and believing it as you're
Mhm.
saying it and being believable and memorable when you're saying it
That's
comes
right.
from. So
That's
that
right.
practice is key.
So the reason the memorable part is so important, especially today, is that I, as a recruiter, may be interviewing 20 people a day. And prior to that, I have screened 500 resumes. And I'm doing maybe 50 15-minute screen interviews on the phone. I mean, I am talking to and interacting with so many people. I need to be able to remember you so that when I'm sitting with the hiring team and saying, you know what, I like that Kelley Biskupiak. Kelley may not even be as qualified as Susan Rietano Davey, but she gave a better interview. I remember her. Really, that's how low the bar is, being memorable. Many of you have probably heard about the STAR method of, we use different language in our course, but the STAR method is it's commonly known. It's outline what the situation is, tell me what the tasks were, tell me what you achieved, and then tell me what the result was. So it's a good structure for telling a story. You need to practice telling stories. For some people, it comes very naturally. For most people, it does not. And you can do something as simply as recording yourself on your phone, doing it in front of a mirror, setting up a Zoom call and doing it that way. There are tools in LinkedIn if you want to take it further. There's an interview tool right in LinkedIn where you can push a button. It'll give you a question, record your answer, and a bot will evaluate your answer. So there are levels of using technology. Bottom line is you need to practice delivering this so that it is memorable. It captures my attention.
Yes. And I want to say something about the actual process of what's happening to you as you are doing this. So writing it down, actually writing it, your whole entire story out on a piece of paper is the first step because it's giving you that binding, like you can clean up the language, you can clean up all of the ums and the this and the that. You can clean it all up so you know your key points that you want to hit and then speaking it. So what we find in education is that if you are really like wanting to communicate something and communicate effectively, you want to write it. You want to
There's like a
speak it.
kinesthetic connection, like a mind-body connection.
Yeah, it's actually you owning. Once you put something on a piece of paper, you know that feeling when you put something, you're writing your book,
Yeah.
right? So it's like once you put that on a piece of paper, it's real. It's real and it's binding. And so that is a part of this storytelling that we want you to use as you are developing your story, your compelling story. And like we said before, you all have one.
And when we talk about memorable, stories are memorable. Telling me I'm very good under pressure, I'm very calm under chaos, I make order wherever I go. I don't remember that, but you tell me a story about how you did it and it's a good one, you tell it well, I'll remember it.
Yeah.
Okay. So a couple of other tips on storytelling, and this is an essential message that we tell employers and we tell anyone who comes through our path as a student or graduate or private client. Work is work, whether it's paid or unpaid.
Right. Yeah.
Remember that.
Yes.
Right.
The new skills and experiences you gain during your career break are valuable workplace currency. And we want you to see that. And we want you to have confidence in the fact that that is important work that is being done. Do you want to?
And it should be presented on your resume the same way, the example I gave earlier of the Google engineer who is then a leader in the community. You need to present it in the same way. Present it as this was the role, this is what I did, this is what I accomplished, these were the results. With the same level of confidence, but it's a different experience. And sometimes you have to educate your audience on the fact that these unpaid experiences are valuable. This is what I learned, this is what I accomplished. But you're also learning specific new skills when you're on a break, because you may have left, example again, 15 years ago, and there were no newsletter tools like SurveyMonkey what's the other monkey one? MailChimp. Or Constant Contact. So you might have been doing a template in Word, but now you've learned those tools in your role as the, on the board of the preschool, for example. So looking at these new skills that I've learned and owning those as well.
And also really thinking about what you're inviting in that right now, while you're in the process, so if you are going to volunteer or you're going to take on something new, really thinking about what is going to grow my skill set.
Right. And where do you want to invest your time? Being a little
Yes.
more selfish about it.
Exactly. And you grow a skill and you're also contributing. That's going to feel really good to you. And it's going to grow your confidence because it's you out there being productive and contributing in some way. Yeah.
So you need to understand that you have workplace currency, and that is the things that you've done, the skills that you've accrued and acquired and perfected, and the results that you achieved during those years out of a traditional workplace.
Yes. So story tip, and we're going to break this down a little bit. Right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So you're going to reframe your career break history. So let's break this up.
These are the specific ways to identify that workplace currency. So think about what you've done as a volunteer in your community, in your kids' schools. If you have elder care responsibilities in the senior center where you might your parent might be in your place of worship, or on some type of nonprofit board.
Yeah. What have you done as gig work? And we want you to know that gig work could be 3 hours on a Tuesday for your sister-in-law. That could be considered gig work. It could be something that you've taken time, maybe you worked for 2 months or 3 months for something.
I think what we find a lot is that women will work for their spouses.
Yes.
But they're doing it at home.
More stories about this.
Exactly. Meaningful work. Like,
Yes.
oh, I just do the books for my husband's company. Well, it's a $500 million company.
Yeah.
Or I just, every year my husband has me help him write his reviews. I mean, that is work. So claiming that, not being ashamed of it. I don't want to say ashamed, but not giving yourself credit for it because it wasn't paid.
Well, it's overlooking it.
Mhm.
It's not, sometimes the value has to come from how you are actually thinking about the work. It has to start with you. Yeah. Yeah.
The last one. Yeah.
Okay. So, what have you done as a caregiver? And
this is a really easy one to overlook.
Yeah. And it's caregiver of children. It's caregiver of elderly parents. It's caregiver in
general. And it's also considering the fact that what you've done as a caregiver has benefit beyond your family members. So for a good example, we had a student named Casey who had a neurodiverse child. She was a single parent. She had a very senior marketing job. She left it because the schools were not meeting her son's needs. But in the process of advocating, and Roseanne as well, in the process of advocating for their children, and in Roseanne's case, it was for the Chicago Public Schools, in making sure that the learning materials were available to them in different modalities. In their case, I think it was video.
Julyn too.
And Julyn as well. And advocating for their children, they were creating opportunities for other children, and they were procuring resources for other families. So not just thinking, well, what did I do? I homeschooled my kid. Really thinking about what you did, or I advocated for my children in the public schools. Those activities have benefits beyond just your family.
Well, and our student Leslie, who was taking care of her mother.
Yes.
And, really realized all of the deficits that were,
she became an aging in place educator within her mother's senior living community. Again, not paid, but she's now trying to parlay that into something paid. So just thinking a little bit more creatively. Sometimes it helps to do this with someone else.
Yes.
We're not as likely to give ourselves credit for what we've done. That's why in our courses, we always pair people together. I will have an easier time understanding the value of what you've done than I will for the things that I've done.
Yeah.
So maybe finding someone to work with on this exercise would be helpful.
So the 3 essential messages of any career break story are...
We drive this home.
Yes.
So you will always say this in every interaction, whether it's a screening interview, a networking call, or a job offer interview. I loved my work. I was really good at it. It was a sacrifice to leave my work. But given my situation at the time, it's a choice I'm glad I made. That's the first piece. You're educating them, reminding them that you were a rock star and that it was really hard for you to leave. Because very often, women who take career breaks are perceived as privileged. Their challenge in leaving work is considered, a first world problem or not a problem at all. That it's a problem born of privilege and not really anything very serious, but it's important to educate them that it is a sacrifice. The second piece, during that time that I was out of the regular workforce, I tapped into and acquired new skills. I perfected my old ones. These are the things that I learned during those 10 years I was in an untraditional work arrangement.
Mhm.
And then number 3, I am ready and eager to take all of those professional skills I acquired at Google and Amazon or wherever you worked, and those things that I developed and perfected during my years as a community volunteer and a part-time professional back into the workplace here on your team for this job. And that's why I'm really excited to be here today.
This particular slide, you might even want to just take a screenshot of it. I mean, you can always
We
go back
actually
on the
created this
recording.
for a webinar like this, but now we put it into a course
Yes,
too,
yeah.
because it's an easy framework. It's almost scripted for you.
This is that, tell me about yourself.
Mhm.
This is, you're on a networking call and, give me a little flavor as to who you are and what you've done. This is what you want to use as your template. You
Yeah.
want to make sure you're filling in your compelling information into here, but these are
That's the
the
framework.
structure that you want to use. This is the structure you want to use.
So then the third mistake right
Mhm.
here.
Yeah, is strategic networking versus post
Post and
and pray. Post and pray.
Right.
Charlie Biskupiak was doing that.
Yeah.
Yes.
So it was Ben Rietano. So a couple things you need to know. I mean, it would make sense that we have these job boards,
Mhm.
and why wouldn't you just apply online? It's easier, you can get more out there, and we do know that it's a numbers game. The problem is the quality of those numbers is so subpar, it's not going to get you anywhere.
Mhm.
So only about 50% of jobs are even posted before they're filled. All right, that is a commonly known, and depending on, there's one guy that says it's 40%, there's another guy that says it's 60%. We kind of stick in the 50% range. But even if it was that only 30% of jobs
Mhm.
were, only 70% of jobs were filled, that's still a lot of jobs that are filled
Right.
before they're ever posted. Because you have to remember that when I'm posting a job, first of all, I have to recognize the need. Now, when we're very busy, we may know we need help.
Mhm.
And you all can relate to this from past jobs or even in your homes. We may not be clear on what help we need.
Right.
So it takes a little time to refine that. Then once I've decided I need the help, I need to make sure that I have a budget to hire someone.
Mhm.
That may take another few weeks. Then I've got to actually take the time to sit down and write a job description.
Right.
That takes some time. I've got to get it to HR and make sure that the recruiter understands it. So there's a lot of time that goes into that precedes that job posting. It could be months.
Mhm.
The need for the job is here. The job posting is here. During this time, this is when we want you striking. This is when we want you talking to people, because I know I have a need. I just don't have the time because I'm so busy, because I have this need to do all the stuff I need to do to get it to write a job description. We told you we'd tell you some stories. We just had a student from, I think, fall of 22 who had been doggedly looking for work, and very specific. She wanted to work in the sciences and academia. So she had a narrow lane, and she was desperately trying to find a job. And she finally found one through networking. And she got back on one of our graduate calls and said, I want you to all know that what Susan and Kelley say is true. They hired me, but they hired me on a contract basis for 4 months. During those 4 months, they are getting budget approval, writing a job description, getting that approved, blah, 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 and posting it. They're posting it just for ha-has. I've got the job.
Mhm.
Which leads me to that second bullet there. If you look at job postings, I want you to understand that there are one of 4 reasons they're being posted. One is that there's actually a job that they have no other sources for, and they want this job posting to bring them candidates to hire. That's one. Number 2 is like Asta's situation. The job is already filled, but we have to go through the
legally.
motions of showing that we are an equal opportunity employer. So we're going to post it and we're going to interview people, but we're hiring Asta. And that was a very powerful moment when
It
she came
was.
on and said, this is what's happening. It's right happening in real time for me. Fortunately, it was happening to her
In her
advantage,
favor.
because usually it's not.
But she's also been in the position where it
And hasn't gone her
hasn't
way
gone her
many
way.
times, right?
Mhm.
The third is we are a company that is on the chopping block, or the selling block, I should say. Either we're looking to be acquired, we are looking to merge, or we're looking to acquire. In any one of those scenarios, we as a company want to look like we're doing well. Short of being able to fudge our numbers, which is hard to do, right, illegal to do, we can look like we're doing well if we have a lot of jobs posted. Because if I'm looking at investing in a company, if I'm looking at maybe merging with one, that's one of the first places I'm going to look. Well, what are they doing here?
Mhm.
Right? It's an easy optic to control, even if it's not backed up by actual jobs. And then the fourth is our company may need someone next year because we're thinking we might catch that big client. And if we do, we're going to need people to fulfill all of the requirements of that one
Let's
client.
start.
So let's put some job postings out there and just kind of build a pipeline of resumes, right? None of these scenarios is going to help you except for the first one, which is
There's
just
an
that
actual job and they posted.
they're going to fill it, right? So you want to get ahead of it. You want to tap into those jobs, what we call the hidden job market, those jobs between where the need arises and when the job is posted. Okay.
And that's going to come from your networking,
Exactly.
right? Yeah. So you all have one, even if you don't think you have one, let's talk about the different.
I mean, we've so many examples of the hairdresser, the therapist, the guy at the bus stop that I've never introduced myself
But they're
to.
job seekers, you know,
Right.
just being on this
Right.
webinar today, oftentimes just connecting with other job seekers that are out there. They have tentacles, they have, you know, connections for you.
The holiday table.
Yes.
We always tell our students immediately, right now, first day of the course, you make sure everyone you're around knows that you're taking this course and that you're going to be relaunching your career. Let people know they want to help you. Former colleagues, we find that our students are very reluctant to reach out to someone that they worked with 10 years ago because they're embarrassed. Well, get over it. You have nothing to be embarrassed about. You've done important work. It's likely that that person may, since you've talked to them, taken their own career break, or maybe they regret that they didn't and wish they could have afforded to. Whatever the case, reach out to those people that you worked with, either from as your clients or as your colleagues, and let them know, I'm looking, you know, and this is what I'm looking for. I'm looking for a job in X, or I'm looking to talk to people who do Y. Okay.
I meant to say this before when you were saying the thing about family, and don't discount the younger generation in your family. You know, I mean, we have many people that we're connected to that are young professionals now. And so don't discount the people that are younger and like substantially younger than you.
We had a student who got her job through her son, who was 24. And he was working at an electric car company. She had formerly worked at GM, but I mean, the last technology she'd worked on was like fuel injection in the 90s. She'd been out a long time. And that's how she got her job, by networking with her son. And then you want to use what we call the connect, message, and meet strategy to find people. So one of the areas that we find is really the easiest and the most productive place to network is with alums. So all of you, and we probably have this on LinkedIn somewhere. You may want to
on our YouTube channel. If you go
pretty sure
onto
it's
our
on there.
YouTube channel, we have a number of LinkedIn
Lessons.
spotlighted lessons.
Yeah.
You'll want to watch those. They're short. They're like 10, 15 minutes,
If
but
that.
there is
Yeah.
always a good gem for you. And this is one of them that she's going to tell you about.
So if you went, I mean, even if you went to a small college or university, what we have found is, first of all, fellow alums are very likely to connect with you. Right? I mean, you know, if they had a good experience, they're going to connect with fellow alums. It's the way it goes. If you go to your alumni page, if you just go to, like, type in the name of your university into LinkedIn and then go to the selection bar and choose alumni, you can go in and create organic searches. You can look, they set up maybe 5 or 6 different bar graphs that will show you this is where the top 10 places where our alums work. These are the top 10 cities where they live. These are the top 10 majors that they have. These are the top 10 job titles they have, blah, blah, blah. You can use that. I like to do more organic search. If you already know, you know, we live in Connecticut in an area where ESPN is a big employer. So a lot of people will move here and say, I really want to work for ESPN. So you could go to your university page and just type in ESPN, and you will be shown all of the people who graduated from your university and work at ESPN.
Yeah.
But that might be too big a number for you to really review. So then you could go back and say, well, you know what? I know I want to work in marketing. You could type in another filter of marketing, in which case you'll get all the alums from your university or college who work at ESPN, who work in marketing. And then you can use that to get information, like what kind of people do they hire? Or to reach out, to connect with them. And then once they connect with you, to ask to meet with them and say, you know, I'm really interested in working in here. I've got all my tools ready. I'd love to talk to you about what you're doing now and how you might be able to help me. And remember this, most companies, and all companies of, I would say, mid to larger size, offer some type of cash compensation to their employees when they introduce a candidate who gets hired. So, and even if you've already applied online, if someone you network with then says, hey, I met this nice person, Kelley Biskupiak. We both went to the same college, and, you know, I talked to her for 5 minutes. She seemed really nice. That's how The bar is so low because by knowing that Kelley is a human who's nice, the hiring manager or recruiter now knows far more than anything he or she knows about the people that are applying online. All right. So really useful tool for LinkedIn and an essential strategy of networking versus just posting and praying.
And that networking piece, everything else that we talked about leading up to this, being practiced, feeling confident, doing all of that,
Knowing your story.
knowing your story, knowing your audience, all of that is going to make you memorable and effective so that that person that you're networking with is going to lobby for
Exactly.
on your behalf. So
Exactly.
you have to have all of those other components in place in order for this to be really effective. And that is a good use of your time. That is a
And
great
we
use of
do
your time.
see a number of people in our programs and in our events that come to us with a good idea of what they want to do
Yep.
and a good resume
Yep.
and even maybe a good LinkedIn profile.
Yep.
But when they're doing the post and pray, you could have the greatest tools ever and it's never going to work.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. And then probably the biggest culprit of all is just not having a negative or having a defeatist mindset of there's just no way I'm going to do this anyway. So why bother?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. You know, what we want you to know and understand is you don't have control over a lot in this process. You actually have no control over some of the major pieces. You don't have control over whether or not someone's going to return an email or whether or not someone is going to connect with you on LinkedIn. You don't have control over whether or not you are going to reach out to someone and they're going to ghost you, or they're going to promise you something and then never follow through on it. You don't have control over the fact that you got all the way to the threshold of the door and then you got the, sorry, we're going with someone else. You don't have control over that. But what you do have control over is your mindset, the way you're talking to yourself, the energy that you are creating in your own life. And you also have control over the people that you're putting around you, your team, the people that are feeding you. And they could be feeding that negative side. And if they are, I promise you, that energy comes through when you network.
For sure. Even on a phone call.
Yes.
Right.
That energy comes through when you're on an interview. If you are getting off of a call or it's not going well and you are commiserating with people and you're feeding that beast, that energy is staying with you. Now, I want to explain because there's a difference between siphoning off, because we're all human. I don't like to be ghosted. I don't like to be rejected.
And we have been.
Yes. And so siphoning off the heaviness of what it takes to job search in a challenging market like we're in right now is healthy. It's healthy to siphon that off, to take a minute and just say, oh my gosh, this is like too much. This all feels too much. And sometimes you cry because it feels like it's too much. And sometimes you get angry because it feels like too much. That's okay to siphon that off. What's not okay is inviting people in or staying in that place where you compile, where you only look at it from the negative lens. I invite you to look at what's going well. I invite you to take a look at what are the things that actually I am doing that are forwarding and deepening my process as I'm navigating this. What are the things that I'm doing to take care of myself? Because this is challenging. This is not easy. If you are doing the things that are going to feed you in the positive way, that energy is going to come through. And that one opportunity, and that's all it takes, guys. It takes one opportunity to pop for you, one right conversation. Asta is a great example of this. She got taken through the ringer in this process, through the ringer, but she kept showing up. She kept bouncing back. She kept putting positive energy and people and thoughts around her. And in the end,
and avoiding the negative.
And avoiding the negative. And in the end, it was one person who had ghosted her months before that came back and said, hey, I got something that I really think you'd be great for. And she was ready for it because she kept picking herself back up, and they wanted someone that was resilient in that role. And now she's got a great job and she's loving it. So it just takes that one opportunity to pop, but everything that you are feeding your brain with in terms of positivity or negativity, that is a game changer. And that is something that you can control. So really think about what you're doing when it comes
So
to that.
Asta spoke kindly to herself. I mean, she created mantras to kind of counter
Oh,
those
yeah.
negative.
She was so great.
Yeah.
And she would come back, because oftentimes you have to, even within the job seeking community, you have to find the people that are staying positive, because there are a lot of negative naysayers that are out there that are going through this process because it stinks and it's hard and it's difficult. But if you put the positive people around you, the people that are going to say, yep, I get it, that has happened to me. I hate it when it happens to me. I hate it that it just happened to you. Like, let's have our minute around it, and then let's begin again. Let's go back to those strategies. Let's go back to the beginning of what this webinar was saying to you, and go through all of those things to pick you up and get you moving forward. There are challenges and ups and downs, and there are so many variables in this that we cannot control, but your mindset and who you put around you and how you take care of yourself, those are the things you can control. So do it so that it's supporting the good for you and not the negative.
She also took care of herself physically.
She did.
And, it's not just about getting your nails done. I mean, she was making sure that she was eating well.
Yep.
That she was exercising, getting fresh air every day, that she was just doing simple things like
20
hydrating.
minutes of exercise can change.
Yeah.
So,
and getting adequate sleep is
Yes.
another big one.
yes, well, in even just like, I remember her saying, like, getting off an interview, I think it was her that was saying this. She got off an interview and it didn't go well, and she went for a walk, just to siphon off the heaviness of all of it, because it's not a personal thing. It feels
Sadly,
so
it's
personal,
not. I know.
but it's not a personal thing.
Yeah.
It often comes down to numbers or things that
I
are
mean, I can tell you,
difficult.
just as a hiring manager, so way back when I started my career in tech, I was a hiring manager. Even then, I sometimes was told you can't hire. I still remember the name of one candidate because her name was Henriette, and there aren't too many of those around. And I couldn't hire her because of VP, whose name I won't say just in case, his nephew was coming into town, and I didn't even have to interview him. He was just given to me. And I was mortified because I had to tell this candidate that I had made pretty clear I wanted to hire, that I couldn't hire, and I couldn't tell her why.
Yeah.
It happens a lot. So just know, not that knowing it's not personal makes it easier.
But oftentimes.
But it can at least take some of that, oh my God, I did everything wrong, because usually it's not you.
Yep.
All right. So one other thing we want to leave you with, and this is another little bit of a mindset trick, is that career breaks are ubiquitous here in the US. I mean, depending on whose numbers you believe, 43% or 62%, so I usually sit at 50, of all women will take a career break of at least 2 years to care for family. And those career breaks benefit everybody. So we gave the example of the person who might be parenting a neurodiverse child and advocating with the public school system to make sure that his or her needs are met, and how all the other children in that school and all the other children coming up who are also neurodiverse will benefit from that. Think about all of the work that you've done in your community or for your family and how it's benefited everybody, including the person who's interviewing you. Now, I'm not necessarily saying you should tell them that, call it out. But know it. I mean, a smart person will understand it if you speak with it. I did this work and I'm really proud of the fact that this created a new accessible playground for all the children in my community. In fact, you may have a relative who has some physical disabilities that will benefit from that playground, just kind of teeing it up that way to educate your audience, right? We do important work. And because and I put Kelley and us in this category because we did that work. We both took career breaks. We were both very involved in our communities. Because we do all of this, other people don't have to worry about it, right? They benefit from our experience, our contributions. So knowing it can take the form of you telling your interviewer or your audience that, but at the very least, knowing that should give you some more confidence that it matters. All right. So that is it for our formal presentation. We do want to give you a couple of little heads up. You can connect with us at our website, which is preparetolaunchu.com. We are also on LinkedIn. We would love for you to follow our page. You can connect with us individually there. We're on all social media platforms. Kelley mentioned YouTube. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. We put new content out every Monday. The videos are between like 8 and 12 minutes long. They're very specific. We have a fairly robust library now. So if you go to our YouTube page and you have a question, as you suggested, on LinkedIn, you can do search LinkedIn. It'll show you all the videos that we do on LinkedIn. Same thing with interview. There are some topics where we provide a lot of content. There is a lot of, we offer a lot of free
Yes.
resources for you.
Yeah.
We also offer a for-pay, very high touch career relaunch program that's done in small cohorts. And if you are at all interested in learning more about it, we will be doing an information session next Wednesday, is it? Next Wednesday at noon Eastern time. And in the follow-up email with some of the free materials we're going to provide you, Megan will also provide you a link to that. Okay.
Let's stop the share. Meg, I saw some questions coming in, but it's hard to present.
Yeah. We have one from Ivy, and then Lori kind of agreed, but Ivy said, I've discovered that no more than 15 years of experience should be on your resume, and most of my last 20 years is extensive volunteerism.
Yeah.
I've changed my resume accordingly, but seems volunteerism isn't enough. So, and then a couple of the other people attending here today agreed. So can you speak to how to capture that?
It's not enough, and I would love to know how Ivy discovered that, because it's just wrong. So a couple of things. First of all, Ivy, if I knew your last name and I wanted to know how old you were, I could find it out in 10 seconds, give or take a year, right? If I'm that interested in how old you are, the only reason to truncate a resume is to hide your age. But I'm going to know how old you are. I'm going to know because I can look it up, and I'm going to know when I see you that what's 15 years out of college, that you're not 36 if you're 50. I mean, it just, you know what? I think we look good, but we don't look like we're 36, right? So if you can get that out of your mind, know this: if the bulk of your work experience is before 15 years, and I'm not seeing it on your resume, you've given me no reason to hire you, right? I'll use myself as an example. I started out in big tech. I worked through various levels. I left at a staff management level. Then I stayed home to raise my kids. When I was going back, I ended up starting my own company. But if I hadn't included that experience, it would give them no reason to hire me. My volunteer work is very important, but it is not enough to make the case for why I should be hired back into tech.
Mm-hmm.
So you need to have that experience on there. Now, in general, there are some rules. The longer you were at an organization or in a role, the more real estate it gets on your resume. The longer ago, again, a little less. But we had a student in our last cohort who has, what was Alicia, 20 years, 18 years? I forget, a long gap. And it wasn't until maybe week 8 that we learned what she had done. Okay, she worked at Lehman Brothers before they were bad. She worked at, Cantor Fitzgerald, 2 major finance houses, very exclusive places to work, places where for you to get hired there, you had to be top of the heap. Then she worked at MasterCard. Then I forget where else, but I mean, it was like blue chip companies. And when she was working on resume, and PepsiCo, none of them would have made the 15-year rule, Ivy. None of them. And they're essential to her story, because even I'm very interested always. And you just have to trust me. I'm old. I've been doing this for a very long time. The advice you got was probably well-intentioned, but it's wrong, because not only is hiding the age just unnecessary and kind of useless, but I know as a hiring manager, I want to know where you started, because where you started says a lot about your pedigree. You know, if you started at PwC, even if that was 28 years ago, that says a lot about who you are foundationally, right?
And I think when it comes to that compelling, memorable story that you're creating, a nod to that's where you cut your teeth.
That's where I got my foundation.
Exactly. That's something that you get to carry with you forever.
Always.
And so you want to be able to, again, present that in a way that is going to, be memorable. And that is a part of, you can even look, if you look on our YouTube channel, we have the gap, resume gap
Oh,
the couple of
yeah, we
sessions in
did
there. Yeah.
a short series on talking about your resume gap.
And it speaks to what some of, like I see Yi and Sue talking about some of that. It speaks to how it
Right.
kind of like really like, it takes you step by step how to do,
Yeah,
to
Ivy
showcase
wrote
what
back,
it is.
you
Yeah.
absolutely you have to include it.
Yeah.
And Yi, we have a couple of actually people who just graduated, I didn't realize this. Yi just graduated from our program.
Yeah.
What did she say? Well, whatever she said, she said something about how it'll help, because Yi also had a long break with some real big time experience prior.
And I think like something that you teach in the course is you might not put a lot of real estate in all those jobs that you had 20 years ago, but you're gonna mention it, you're gonna allude to it, and then it's gonna get noticed. And put it in a headline, put it in your, your executive statement right at the top, or in your about section in your LinkedIn. So even though you can't give it a lot of space, like it's there.
Mm-hmm. Ivy, one other thing, yeah, for all of you, I would imagine have a number of years of experience. So you're going to have a 2-page resume. It's only someone very young or with very limited experience can do a readable 1-page resume. Most people expect it to be 2 pages. In the case of the 2-page resume, again, which most of you will do, make sure that whatever that big time experience, Ivy, in your case, you were working for Fortune 500 tech, make sure it's above the fold, I say, which means make sure it's on the first page. So we had a student, Teresa, who had an 18-year career break, and she had a ton of great experience, but she also had some really good volunteer experience, and she put so much of it that her last job, which was at Sony, wasn't there on the first page. So that's another little tip there. Okay.
What else, Meg?
Yeah, I'm really glad you asked that question, Ivy.
Thank you.
Yeah, the next question comes from Julie. She says, any suggestions on how to pivot to a remote job after taking a break? And then she was another one from her in a second.
Yeah, so a couple of things. First of all, one of Kelley loves all my little Susanisms, but one of them is flexibility is compensation. It's not an accommodation. If you limit yourself to looking for jobs that are advertised as fully remote, you are really cutting yourself out of opportunities that you should not.
And this just happened with one of our students that they went through the whole process.
Yeah.
And they needed it to be remote.
Yeah.
And then they were able to negotiate.
Right. So the idea is that you want to get yourself in the running. If you know that the company has a precedent for remote work, if you know that they have a hybrid policy at least, go through the interview process, go through it fully and excited and engaged with the full expectation of taking the job if it's offered to you. If you absolutely must work full-time remote, then after you've been given the offer and you've reviewed it, when you come back with your counter offer is going to be, I love the fact that ABC company has embraced remote work. I think it's great that you have a 3-2 policy here. For my personal situation, and because I'm used to working remotely, if that's the case, I would prefer to work full-time remote. So I'd like to make that a precedent for me accepting the job. Now they may come back and say no, but then what you can say is, you know what, I understand. And I will tell you this, I am as open-minded employer as could be, but it would be very hard for me if I were running a big corporate team to take someone in full-time remote that has not ever worked for me.
Right.
And I also would argue, Julie, that there is too much important informal learning and mentorship and networking, for lack of a better word, that takes place physically in the office that is most essential when you're first starting out. So what you could then perhaps offer is, I understand.
Yeah.
I kind of agree that there's a lot that I can learn here as coming into the office. So why don't we do this? Why don't I start on the 3 days remote, 2 days in the office for the first 90 days? But once I've got my feet wet, once I've proven myself to you, then I'd like to again revisit this, because I ideally would like to work full-time remote, because I find I'm more productive if I don't have a long commute, blah, 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 whatever your reasons are.
Julie just piped in and says the company is a startup, and I think all roles right now are remote.
Well, then it's not something to worry about. Yeah, I mean, if it's all remote, you're fine. But Julie, I don't want you to make the mistake of only looking for jobs that are remote, because let me just tell you something. Most of the very senior level managers want employees who are 18 with 22 years of experience and no responsibilities, right? Which is obviously a fictional character, but that's what they want. They want someone who's completely unencumbered by anything else. And we aren't those people, right? So they may have a flexible work policy, but they really want the person who's going to be there all the time. So if you're looking for them to advertise that they're totally flexible, you can choose your work schedule, you're going to really limit yourself to the very few progressive corporate cultures that are out there. Okay.
Yeah, that's great. Okay.
Can
we do?
We can go a few
just
minutes
wanted
over,
to
right?
say-
We can go a few minutes over, Megan.
Okay.
If we-
Let's do another question
I think
about.
Julie was trying to say something, Meg.
Yeah,
Oh.
Julie, go ahead.
Go ahead, Julie.
I think it's so important to have collaborative environment just as you're returning back to work.
Mhm.
But that's the opportunity, and they actually found me on LinkedIn, which is ultimately what you want to have happen. But coming back after a pause, it's just if maybe it's to have a conversation offline with you, just what is the infrastructure if you're looking at a full-time remote role, you're not going back to that collaborative environment, and how to successfully pivot back long term.
All right, so you're bringing up a really good point.
Yeah.
If you go back to one of the early slides where we talked about assessing a particular opportunity, one of your priorities right now for many of you is particularly those who were caregivers for a long period of time. Going back to the office is fun. During COVID, I mean, it's just Kelley and me, but it's so much more fun when we're together than when we're apart.
Yeah.
And if you've been, especially if you're an empty nester, I mean, this could be the primary way that you connect with people. So as you're looking at asking those questions, like, is this a good fit for me? Does this meet my needs and wants? It may not. I'd also like to caution all of you on this sexy startup. Sexy startups are often run by 27-year-olds who don't have a lot of experience, who aren't good managers, who aren't going to be successful, right? I mean, the majority of startups fail. Even once they get their Series B funding, they can still fail. So I think that's just kind of become like the sexy, like, I'm working for a startup.
Yeah.
That may not be the best situation, especially if you've been out for a while and you're looking to build your skills and learn. A startup working remotely with a very young team, you're not going to get that.
And also, Julie, I just want to say this, and for everyone else, you can take a job and still be exploring and
Yes.
assessing.
Yeah.
So, Julie, say you land this job and you take it, you can try it on.
Right.
You are not, you're not tethered to it for the rest of your life. And especially if you know how to strategically job search now, you have that in the wings if you decide that this is not a fit for you. So we have many, many clients and students that have come through the program who try something on and realize, oh my gosh, I thought I wanted to be in this lane, or I thought I wanted to be doing this work.
Right.
And that's still exploring and assessing, and it's not a fit for me. This is not a fit for my life. This is not a fit for my values and, and what I want to do. Yes, maybe my skill set fits and meets the
Right.
criteria, but I am also thinking I'm thinking about this very, very differently maybe than I did when I took my first job, my first role,
And so we do a
15,
whole
17
lesson in
years ago.
a course just on evaluating your priorities and really looking at what matters most to you, because it really will drive that lane and that audience.
Yeah.
The other thing, Julie, you want to be careful to do or to not do is just take it because it's available.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Thank you both so much. I enjoy your content, and whenever I get an email, it's like, okay, that's how I'm going to start my morning. So thank you both.
Oh, thank you.
That's
That's great to hear.
Megan, that's so great to hear.
Yeah, because Megan really helps us with the emails. She pretty much writes them.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
Aw.
Yeah.
Thank you, Julie.
Can we do one last question? It also came from Julie, but I think it's really important just about career re-entry, and then we can finish on that. Is how to
I also
create.
want to answer this A. Reeves question.
Oh, good. Yeah, let's do it. How to create barriers with my family as they are used to me being around and available.
Yes, that can be probably one of the most challenging parts to returning to work, when you have become the catch-all for everyone's everything. And what I'm going to say is boundaries, 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 but you have to be clear about first what you've taken on. What are all of your responsibilities? What are the things that you do? And you can sit down and actually write these things out on a piece of paper. And then you have to ask for help. You actually have to ask for help because you can't carry it all by yourself. And so you can think about, all right, well, what can I delegate on this list? What am I going to outsource on this list? I'm going to hire somebody to start doing these things. And then what am I going to let go of altogether? I'm no longer doing these things. I have to get rid of, I have to kind of clean house.
A
And
lot of those things tend to be the volunteer things that you've
Mhm.
signed up for that just need to go if you're going to be working.
Yep. And so, but the hardest part of all of that is not necessarily writing down all of your tasks that you do or sorting them and deciding who's going to do. It's actually letting people grow into the roles that you have perfected over time. It's really, really hard to let go of the things that we've done. We are fine-oiled machines, right? We know where everything is. We know how everything's organized. We've been really perfected this role that we've been in for an extended period of time, and offboarding those things. It's the challenge is just letting them go, letting somebody else take over, maybe do it differently.
I'm
than
pretty
you've
sure
ever
we have a
done before.
YouTube video on that. If you go to our YouTube
Yep.
channel, I'm pretty sure
Yes.
she does that. Kelley just gave you like the 1 minute version of what is a whole lesson over in a week
Yeah.
of our course. But there's a little bit more detail on LinkedIn too. I mean, on YouTube too. So hopefully that can help. All right. And A. Reeves asked, how about if you see a full-time position, but you can only work part-time hours, do you still apply and get in the running? Same kind of scenario as what we were talking about with Julie with the remote when I misunderstood her question. If you are only available to work 10 hours a week, then no. But if you're available to work 30 hours a week, if part-time to you is I need to work 4 days or I need to, work 30 hours, then you put yourself in the running. It may be that because of the nature of the work, it's something that you could do very easily because maybe it's something that is exactly what you did before. Maybe you've done it at a higher level. Flexibility is compensation. It's not an accommodation. So if you are going through the process and you tell them at the very beginning, well, I only want to work, 3 10-hour days a week. You're not going to even advance. You'll never advance. You won't even get a first interview if you start there. So if you believe, it only works if you believe you are very well qualified for the position. You can't go into a situation where they want you full-time, but you want to come in full part-time and you're not exceedingly well qualified. Assuming you're exceedingly well qualified, it's a very good fit. Go through the process. And then when they make you the offer, negotiate. And the way you would negotiate for that would be to say, thank you so much. I'm thrilled that you think I'm the best candidate for the job. I feel I am too. I also believe this is a job that I can do in fewer than a 40-hour work week. So I think we have an opportunity here to have me fulfill the role in fewer hours per week and have you pay me slightly less. I'm looking for an 80% schedule. 80% would be 30 hours. No, that'd be 75, roughly 32 hours a week would be 80%. And I'd like to do it in 3 days. I'd like to do 3 long days. I find that I do very well when I can just get in and focus and do the work for a longer period of time than trying to spread it out over 5 shorter days. And play with them, be a little bit flexible in negotiating with them. Give them, if they're hedging on it, give them a timeline. Say, you know what, I understand this is new to you. I've done this before. I know my ability, but I want to make sure that you're comfortable with it. So let's try it for 90 days and see how it works. Or alternatively, let's do it regular full-time for the first month so I can get my feet wet. And then we'll transition to the schedule that I think will work best for me. And we'll revisit it every 90 days. So I want to make sure that I am meeting all of the goals that you've set forth for me. All right. But yes, that is part of the compensation discussion. All right.
Great.
Awesome. Yeah. All right. So Megan, do you want to wrap up? You've got some things to tell them?
Yeah, so thanks everyone for joining us today. It was a pleasure to share this information with you, and we hope that you found it helpful. Just a reminder that you'll be sent the recording and some additional resources in a follow-up email today. And you can stay in touch with us by emailing us. Our email is info@preparetolaunchu.com or visit us on LinkedIn. I put the LinkedIn links in the chat. We'd love to hear from you and support you in your career relaunch. So that's it.
Thank y'all. Thank you so
Bye,
much. Have a
everybody.
great day.
Thank you.